Hello, I'm Blabbercat, and this is the first art storytime video that I decided to make. I am making another Melanie Martinez fan art here, as you can see, and those of you who are fans can probably tell that this is from the song Orange Juice from her recent movie K through 12. The reason why, instead of some music in the background, I am here with a story is because this song and the music video kind of spoke to me. I think Melanie Martinez's movie spoke to a lot of us because she seemed to be trying to cover quite a bit of society's issues that have at one point had an effect on most people, I would like to think. But this song in particular speaks to me because a couple of years ago I had an eating disorder of my own that I struggled with and recovered from. So if that is something you might not want to hear about and would just like to see the art, I won't blame you, and if you mute the audio or just click off, it's fine. Anyway, so the song Orange Juice is about a girl who had bulimia. She has an issue with the way she looks and essentially ate oranges and turned them to orange juice, in quotation marks, via purging her meals of oranges in the song. Crybaby, aka Melanie, talks about how she wants to give her set of eyes because your eyes aren't working. And she takes out her eyes and hands them to Vlare, the girl from the movie. And the scene just kind of seemed so powerful and just stuck with me, and I wanted to capture that moment in a piece of art. But if I'm being 100% honest here, I do not feel like I have done it justice, and looking back it feels a bit kind of meh to me, but whatever. I'm still proud of what I created nonetheless. Now, it is important for me to disclose that the eating disorder in particular that I struggled with was not bulimia, and instead it was anorexia. Another thing I should disclose is that my eating disorder didn't start as a problem with my self-image, as most people know and see as the culprit of such disorders typically. I was always a skinny kid, and I always ate a lot. My friends would compare it to me eating more than an elephant. I had friends that were larger, and I had people that would talk about how skinny I was, and they would talk about how lucky I was too. And some would accuse me of being anorexic or not eating enough before the whole mess even started, and I didn't even know what that word meant. This is kind of important for later in the story how it affected me, but it honestly upsetted me at the time to hear that, and it kind of hurt that people would assume I was so shallow to care about my appearance and be so vain. I know that sounds kind of terrible and a misrepresentation of the problem, but I was a kid, and I just knew that starving yourself for looks was bad, and that was my perception of it. So if anything, I would go out of my way to eat more than usual sometimes around those particular people who would accuse me to prove them wrong about me, which was no issue anyway. I loved food, and it didn't really affect me, but my life is far from perfect, and not all eating disorders are the same, and not all are caused by the same thing, as I myself learned from experience. I dealt with neglect and multiple kinds of abuse in my life, and I considered myself lucky to have any friends, both online and in school, as an escape, but there were a few classes with credits that I needed that I had failed due to the strain that such abuse had on my grades and just, my mental state. I begged my mom to allow me to do cyber school from home, partially because it provided me with the means to catch up the credits that I needed to graduate on time, and also because my home situation was a bit rocky, to say the least. My mother wasn't on her meds and would often yell at me when I came home from school. She seemed to focus a lot of it on me in particular, and being in cyber school allowed me to stay over with family members that saw what was going on and like to provide me with an escape from the verbal abuse that was going on. And just it was like verbal, emotional, it was a mess. I don't want to get into it. So for the first 2 semesters, that seemed to work wonderfully, and not only did I have A's and B's, but I was also so far ahead I was looking at finishing months in advance. Everyone was so proud of me. I was proud of myself. I may have started drifting from my friends a little bit, but I thought it was going to be worth it to be able to be a senior with all my friends the following year. Unfortunately, that all changed when an event that I feel completely broke me down, where all the other abuse, neglect, anything, it just didn't break me down to the point that this did. I was betrayed by the only family member that seemed to care or be sympathetic to what I went through regarding some of the worst abuse, some of the things that were deemed family secrets, and I should just get over it. It was the only person who validated me. I won't go into specifics because I don't want it to overshadow the main story. I'm just trying to tell here that it hit me real hard. My grades dropped. I couldn't bring myself to do anything. I stopped talking to friends as often, which was already something I was failing at. I stopped eating for days and sometimes up to a week at a time. I didn't do it on purpose. I just felt numb and wouldn't feel hungry or any sensation of hunger and would forget. And I just laid around in my room or hid away best I could and just distracting myself, and I would forget. Like, I would legitimately forget. And I went from 120 pounds to 105 within less than a month, and I noticed how skinny I was starting to look, how sickly hollow my armpits looked, and how very small my arms were, how my ribs started to become more visible. They were always visible, but they were even more so. My hip bones were even more jutted out. I felt terrible. I hated myself for it because I remember everyone told me how lucky I was to be so skinny, and here I am not eating and worried people would think that it was for other reasons like attention or looks, when in reality I was just struggling so hard. So I tried to hide it rather than ask for help at first. I mean, what was I gonna do? I was gonna go to people who are struggling to lose weight, because that was everyone around me, and go, boo-hoo, I'm too skinny. I just didn't feel like I would get any support. So a lot of the times I would go days without eating, and then I would just shove food down my throat, not really eating. Like, I was just, I could taste it, but it felt like I wasn't really tasting it. I was just eating because I knew I needed to eat to survive. My grades continued to drop, and I failed every single class that year. I went from looking to finish the year early to failing, and it was failure after failure, shame after shame, and not a lot of my friends were talking as much to me because I just became so broken down that I guess, I mean, they were in high school too. I mean, what were they supposed to do? I didn't know how to handle the situation. Like, were they supposed to know? Like, it wasn't my job, it wasn't their job. Like, we were children. So I also experienced the worst birthday I ever experienced that year. Ignored, everyone fighting. In fact, the fact that it was my birthday was overlooked that year. They were trying to use it as cover, my birthday party as cover, to host a not graduation party. It was a retirement party for someone who was one of my abusers. And I was only allowed to have one friend over because it wasn't my birthday party. It was his retirement party. And that was selfish, but that's different. And that didn't help the situation. But later on in the year, I also had to attempt to call CPS on my own family for obvious reasons, because there was just a lot going on, but backed out of fear because me and my sister were not removed from the home and we were just too afraid to go on. So after summer, I started school again, and I tried so hard to gain the weight back because I was still having problems eating, remembering to eat. I'd go days without it, and I just feel terrible, and I feel it would even further the problem, because it was depression that started it, and if it caused more depression, it was just a ruthless cycle. And I made sure to stay above 100 pounds at the very least, and I never reached a weight that, like, with my height would have technically been considered a danger, but I was just barely above a healthy weight for my size. And it felt scary to me that I would just forget to eat, and I wouldn't feel hungry or any pain, and I had to consciously remember when I was just trying to spend my days trying to forget everything. And then suddenly, I can't remember how many days it had been since I ate sometimes, you know, just, it wasn't fun. Whenever I got back into school, because I didn't do cyber school again, the school nurse let me stay in the mornings with her to eat my breakfast. She was kind of my saving grace. I kind of let her know what was going on, and because it took longer than normal for me to eat, so sometimes I would break down crying while shoving food down my throat, because that was what I was doing. I wasn't eating, I wasn't really enjoying it. I was just shoving food down my throat because I knew I needed to, just because I forgot to eat for a couple days. I couldn't even remember when the last time I ate was, so I knew I needed to shove food down my throat so that, you know, I could make up for not eating, I guess. I felt pathetic and pretty worthless. I felt like a failure. I felt like I didn't deserve any special treatment because it was my fault, because I was the one not eating. And I mean, I felt like I didn't really deserve any sympathy, because it was something so stupidly simple. You eat, and I was stupidly calling myself lazy. Whenever I hid it from a lot of people and I was ashamed, the ones I did let know didn't seem to know how to handle it. I said that, and it kind of took me 2.5 years to overcome this and start eating and feeling hungry again. And when I finally felt the sensation of hunger, it was honestly a little painful, because I didn't eat as often and I was still working on that. And I was just so hungry all the time by the time I started to become happy enough to eat. And that was good to me. I was happy. I had kind of happy tears the first time I ate and enjoyed the food again. I just felt so hungry. And little did I know that the damage I had done to my body would most likely be, permanent, or at the very least, long lasting. I got stretch marks from losing weight so fast, and I got stretch marks from gaining it so fast, and my super fast metabolism was now super low from basically starving myself too long, and it kind of hasn't recovered to this day, and that is nearly 4.5 years after I started eating steady again. When I started gaining weight back, I started to gain more than I used to have. I wasn't fitting clothes I used to. I started to feel unsure about my body, and for the first time started feeling like I needed to watch what I eat, before realizing that that was the last thing I should be worrying about after finally eating normally again. I was shocked and surprised with myself and disgusted even. I made such a big deal about being too skinny and not eating enough, and here I was worrying about not being skinny enough. I should be celebrating my recovery, not trying to trip myself into another problem. And so I stopped worrying about it and just enjoyed food, enjoyed feeling hungry and eating again when I felt hungry, and knowing I was getting better and that life was getting better, because then I was finally out of that hellhole that was my childhood home, and I stopped worrying until I reached a peak weight of 185 pounds 3 years later in life, and realized I was now getting unhealthy in another way around. And so I started to watch what I eat, but this time I don't limit myself food in a usual diet way. If I am hungry, I eat, and I try to eat better, but I will eat junk food too, just smaller servings than before. I've gotten myself down to 162 pounds at one point and gained back up to 170 pounds right now, but I feel like my metabolism is doing a lot better, and I don't feel like I have as unhealthy a relationship with food as I used to. I mean, I feel like it's at least healthy enough now to be maintained. I feel hunger whenever I need to eat, and to be honest, I don't hate that feeling. I'm happy to feel hungry and be able to eat and enjoy every bite and sit and wonder what I want to eat rather than what can I find shoved down my throat so I don't starve myself further than I already have. That was a pretty low time whenever that was how I thought about eating. The song Orange Juice really felt important to me, despite telling another story fairly different than mine, because I had those moments of self-doubt, those times where I lacked love in my appearance and who I was, and those were the parts I hate to admit the most through it all. I am more ashamed of me judging myself when I gained weight and thinking of going on a diet and, slowing down, than I am for the fact that I starved myself frequently for 2.5 years, because in my eyes, I didn't starve myself on purpose for appearances. And if I complain about how I look when I finally started to gain weight, then who's to say anyone will believe the actual pain that caused me to develop the disorder in the first place? I know it's wrong and that's not how it is, but that's how my brain works. But regardless of the story and the song being different, the thing that got me the most in the music video of the song is the fact that Crybaby worked to end the disorder of her future friend had. It's that instead of being disgusted, she was sympathetic, and that she just wanted to help. She gave her eyes, she swapped her eyes to show commitment to help her. And that stuck with me, to see that there was no shame put on her. It was just concern for her well-being. The whole message of the movie K-12 was amazing, and I think the message of the song is amazing, and I feel like there's a secondary message in the song besides the idea of loving who you are. I feel it's also that helping someone isn't judging them or shaming them for it. It is actually being there for them and trying to understand and make the person hate themselves less and see the good in themselves. I don't know, maybe that's just a personal message I get, but it feels special to me to see a moment like that, which is why I am making this artwork and why I am telling my story. I feel like this is all too long and too short and too much information and too little all at once. I guess it's because it's a fairly conflicted issue inside of me that I'm still coping with the reality of it in some ways, but that was my story, and here is my artwork, and I guess that's it. I mean, here it is. I don't know. I have a lot of things I could talk about and bring up, but I don't necessarily only want to talk about the bad, so maybe I should try and make more uplifting and a more happy video next time to make up for how goddamn depressing this one kind of is. Maybe a funny one? I don't know. I know I don't get a lot of comments or interaction yet to my videos, but if anyone wants to share with me anything they dealt with or that they can relate to, or how they might have connected with the song differently, I would love to know down in the comments below. Being able to connect with people is one of the main things that kept me going through all my lows in life, and so it is always important and comforting to me to have discussions and share experiences with people. Anyway, that is the end of the video, I guess, and I will be going now, and thank you to everyone who has made it to this point, and I'm sorry if I pronounce things weirdly or have a weird lisp, or I don't know, my voice can be weird. I hope if anyone is going through anything similar to any of the topics mentioned in this video, that not only do you get the help and support that you need, but also know that you deserve it no matter what, and to keep going and keep trying to make it through. You deserve to get through and to feel better, and that even if it doesn't seem like it at the time, things will eventually get better. Life is full of bullshit, and you just gotta find what makes the bullshit worth it, I guess. See ya.